Hey gang, so I am back from my 51-day, 12,064 mile trip up to Alaska and then back home again here in Massachusetts. Now, I had a great trip, but I'm going to be doing some debriefs on everything that I experienced on this trip. Talking about the motorcycle here. I'm going to be talking about how my body did, how my brain did, how my equipment did. So in this video, we're going to talk about the bike, how the bike did out there on the road. But of course, first I've got to wash it. It's pretty darn dirty. And I had some questions about that. How dirty did the bike get while I was traveling up to Alaska? And the answer is it got pretty darn dirty. Now, right now, it's honestly not too bad because, one, I cleaned it in Spokane when I had to take it into the dealer for service. And also, I ran into some rain on Monday when I was coming home. So that cleaned a few things off of the bike as well. But here's some pictures of when it was really dirty just before I took it in for service. Now, before we get into talking about the details on how this bike did, let's just cut down to the nitty-gritty because I know that there are people out there that have short attention spans. The last time I did this, when I went up to Alaska for my Yamaha Super Tenere, I got all kinds of people who complained that I talk too much. So here's the bottom line. The bike did great. I had no problems with it. So if you are interested in one, well, go out and buy it, and you can do that if you live in the New England area at my dealer, that's Mom's in Foxborough, Massachusetts. So now that we've got rid of all those people with those short attention spans, if you're interested in more of the detail on how this bike did, well, stick with me. I'm going to wash it, get it all cleaned up, and then we'll go over everything, set in some pretty good detail. Okay, so here we are several hours later, and now the bike is all clean. I've even cleaned up because it was pretty hot out there. I got pretty stinky. So I'm clean now, the bike is clean, and we're going to talk about how this thing did, this 2023 Triumph Tiger GT Explorer, how it did on this 12,000 mile trip over the course of 51 days. And as I said in the beginning of this, in that little intro, the bike did great. No major problems whatsoever. A couple of minor things we'll talk about, but again, no major issues. Didn't drop the bike, didn't even come close, no punctures, nothing. Everything was great, right? Without any hitch. Now, in the beginning, however, I did have a hitch though. When I left on this trip, I had 17,400 miles roughly on this bike, and I had it scheduled to be serviced about a week before I was leaving. Now, I had set up that appointment many months in advance. All right, so my dealer, again, Mom's here in Foxborough, they knew that I was coming. But when I got there, it turned out that they didn't have all the parts necessary to do the 20,000 mile service. I was going to have that done early because I knew that I was going to be passing that mileage mark, right, while I was out there on the road. And that's the big service. That's when you need the valves checked and the air filter and so forth need to be changed. So, since they didn't have all the parts to do the service, we had a little bit of a quandary. right? I needed to leave in a week. I didn't have time to wait on parts. So we decided that the best course of action was to do a minor service, that is the annual service, right? Every 10,000 miles on the bike. That's changing oil, checking final drive fluid, several other things, updating the software and so forth. So we decided to do that and then put off the valve check, the big service, until when I got back from this Alaska trip, and I would have, well, about 30,000 miles on the motorcycle. Now, I didn't feel, and neither did they, that it was going to do any damage to the engine not to do the valve check and so forth. So there was no real problem there, right? It just simply meant that, at least for me, the big concern was that I was going to be running with an air filter that had 17,000 miles on it. I'm like, well, okay, we'll do it and we'll see how it goes. So I think that was probably one of the things that led to a small issue that I had with the motorcycle. And that was simply that on a few occasions, the bike was sluggish to start. It never failed to start, but a couple of times, well, a few times, it was a little sluggish to start. And talking with the dealer in Spokane and explaining to them the situation, they felt, well, it definitely could be the air cleaner, especially since I ran that all the way up to Alaska, and I know how dirty the bike got. I'm sure that air cleaner is pretty filthy right now and definitely needs to be changed. So that definitely could have contributed to, again, this sluggish starting, like I said, again, on occasion. But it always started, as I said, and that's the only real issue I had with the motorcycle at all. Now, before I go on, let me say that I did work some things out with moms. They realized that they screwed up and they should have ordered those parts right up front, and made sure that they were there when I brought the bike in for service. So for me, I understand that mistakes are going to happen. I don't like it when it happens, but I know that they do happen, especially at a dealer like this. They get really, really busy during the summer. So it's more important to me not that a mistake happened, but how they correct that mistake. So again, I work some things out with them, and I just want you to know that they are taking care of me. I'm not going to give you the details of how they're doing that. Right? That's between me and them. But I want you to know that they did step up, admit that they made a mistake, and they, again, are going to take care of me. Now, a few other things that I did before I left on this trip to make the bike a little bit more comfortable is, one, you guys already know that I changed the bar position on this bike, right? I put risers on the bike and I moved the handlebars rearward, right, so that it was more comfortable for me. I'm only 5'9". I don't have big long arms and long legs, so I wanted those handlebars to come up and back a little bit to make it easier for me to sit upright. So I had done that pretty soon after I purchased the motorcycle. Now, a couple of things that I did just before I left on the trip, and that was that I bought some new bar ends from Evotech. And those are heavier bar ends that help to reduce the vibration in the handlebars. The 2023 and up models on the Triumph 1200s, well, they're a little buzzy in the handlebars and in the seat. It doesn't really bother me all that much unless I really think about it, but I decided since I was going on this long trip that it might be a good idea to go ahead and do that. So I bought those and I installed them, and I have to tell you, they work great. I didn't really have any problem with vibration the entire trip, right? Everything really felt great. My hands felt great, again, for the majority of the trip. So those were a big plus. Second thing that I did was that I got a larger windscreen. I went with the Puig touring windscreen for this motorcycle, the Triumph 1200, and that gave me a little taller and slightly wider windscreen to, again, block some of that wind. And I did that not because I was unhappy with the stock shield. I mean, I actually think it works pretty well, but I knew based upon my last experience riding to Alaska, that I was going to run into a lot of bugs and a lot of rain, right? So, and I wasn't disappointed in those facts. So having the larger windshield I knew was going to be a plus to keep that stuff off of me as much as possible anyway. So that was a big plus. I'm really glad that I did that. Now, the last thing that I did to change the bike was that I ended up putting a seat cover on the bike from Wind Rider seat covers. Right, and you've seen these probably advertised online. They're kind of a nylon net material, and then in between that there's this plastic spring, basically, is what it is, that allows water to run through, allows air to run through it, so it does help to keep your seat cooler and drier. But it also gives you a little bit of cushion. It adds maybe 1/4 to 3/8 inch of height to the seat, not really all that much. And I have to tell you, I was really, really impressed with how it performed on this trip. When I went down to Virginia this year, I had a little problem with my butt being sore. Now, that was my first ride of the year, or at least long ride of the year, and I knew I wasn't going to have much time to, get my butt used to riding before I had to leave on this Alaska trip. So I decided to give this seat cover a try, and it cost me like $73 plus shipping, and I have to tell you, it worked great. It just was really, really awesome. I was very comfortable the entire trip. So I can highly recommend getting one of these seat covers if you're having trouble with a stock seat. Much cheaper than going out and buying a custom saddle. Now, as far as gas mileage goes on this bike, depending upon the road that I was riding on, I was getting between 35, 36, all the way up to like 41 or 42 miles per gallon. Right? If I was on a back road and I was doing 55 or 60, well, then obviously then that range, went up into that 40, 41 range. If I was on the highway doing 80 miles an hour going through South Dakota or Wyoming or Montana, well, then I was getting 35 and 36 miles a gallon. So your range, as with most big bikes like this, can vary depending upon that speed. And it's basically exactly where I figured I would get on a bike this size. Being that I have the 8-gallon gas tank, I never really had to worry about whether I was going to run out of fuel or not. I took it to the 250-mile range a couple of times, but most of the time I was always filling up when the tank was about half full. Especially when I got up into BC, the Yukon, and then up into Alaska, we have long stretches between gas stations. Right? I made sure that anytime that there was gas, even though I had that extra large tank, I still pretended I didn't, and I went ahead and filled up. So again, I just never had a problem finding gas or running out of gas. Now, of course, if you have the smaller tank, the 6-gallon tank, could you do the same trip? Yes, absolutely you could. You just would have to be even more diligent with stopping and, again, filling up that tank whenever gas was available. And on this particular trip, I found that there were more options to buy gas than there were on the trip that we took 7 years ago, right? Looks like a couple of more places have been added, in some of those spots that were long stretches. So again, I didn't really have any problem, and I saw a lot of people who, were on bikes with, 5.5, 6-gallon tanks. I did see a few people carrying extra fuel, which is a good idea, but one guy had like a 3-gallon gas tank strapped to the back seat, and he was on an FJR, which I think has a 5 or 6-gallon tank on it, right? So I wasn't sure why he needed that, but I guess he felt he did. Now, another thing, if you're a short guy in particular, like I am, you got to be careful where you park this thing, right? It's a tall bike, and a lot of times on the roads, you know, going up through BC and so forth. They have a big crown in them. So if you pull over to the right-hand side, you know, you're not going to be able to get your kickstand down very easily. If you're a short guy, it's tough to lean that bike far enough over that you can get the kickstand down. So again, you got to watch that and be careful. A lot of the rest stops I found were just completely bumpy and filled with holes. And again, at least for me, I had to be careful on where I parked the bike. So that's one caveat to riding a tall bike like this, again, that you just need to be aware of. As I said, I never dropped it. I never even came close to dropping it. But again, you just need to be aware. Now, before I left, when they did the service, I had them change the brake pads as well. So I went out of here with new brake pads as well as new tires. And I still have the same brake pads on right now, 12,000 miles down the road. Now we'll see what they say when I go to have it serviced in a week or so. I have found, at least so far in owning this motorcycle, that the Brembo pads don't last all that long. They stop really well. They're expensive, but they also only get 12 or 15,000 miles out of them. So I assume that's purposely done, right, because that's going to give you more stopping power. But I have found that that's the case. So we'll see what they have to say when I take the bike in. I'll have them check them. But so far the bike is still stopping extremely well. I haven't had any problem with that. So now let's talk tires. Before I left, I had a brand new set of Dunlop Trailmax Mission tires put on this motorcycle. And I did that even though I knew most of this trip was going to be road riding. I knew that heading up into Alaska, based upon our last trip up there, I was going to end up finding some dirt roads, gravel roads, mainly because the roads were going to be under construction, as well as I may want to get off and do something here or there. So I thought, well, you know, a 80-20, 50-50 tire, which this thing is somewhere in between there, that would be a good idea. Also, from what I had read, people were getting good mileage out of these, you know, 10, 12. I even read some people said that they were getting 20,000 miles out of these tires. And of course, I didn't believe that, but I still hear people are getting way up there, you know, 15, 16,000 miles out of these tires. And after running them, I honestly can believe that. Right, I figured I was going to get 10,000 miles out of the tires. So I scheduled a service in Spokane when I, again, got back out of Canada. And I was going to have, again, the oil changed and, you know, the whole yearly service thing done and have new tires put on. So I knew that I was going to be between 8,000 and 9,000 miles, and that's right where I was at 8,550 miles, I think it was. When I was in Spokane. So I looked at the tires and I said, well, you know, these tires are actually wearing really, really well. They probably have another 2,000 or 3,000 miles on them. However, I have 4,000 miles left to get home, and I have a dealer right there who has the tires and can put them on for me. So I say, well, you know what, just go ahead and change them, because chances are I'm going to have to change them before I get home anyway. I know every time that I go out on a trip, part of the deal is I'm probably going to have to cycle tires a little bit before their time. Again, that's just part of the deal as far as I'm concerned. But I would rather be on good tires than something that's on its last leg, right? Again, that's just my choice. I know a lot of people would not want to take those tires off until they've gotten every single mile out of them. Again, and I guess that's your choice, but you know, I don't really see the point in doing that. Again, when I have a dealer there who has the tires and ready to change them, and if I don't do it there, then I may have to be hunting for a dealer, you know, 1,000 miles away from home, right? And change my plans, right? Because there's not a Triumph dealer where I wanted to go. So again, it seemed like the best thing to do was to change them. So I did. I now have another set of Trailmax Missions, and I've got about 4,000 miles on these, and they look damn near brand new, I have to tell you. So I will run these as far as I can. I will see if I can get that, 12, 15,000 miles out of these tires. That is as long as I'm here near home. If I'm heading out on another trip somewhere, well, I'm probably going to put new tires on. It's just the way I am. Now, I am struggling to find anything bad to say about this motorcycle because it just did so well on this trip. I was so pleased with it. Right, there are a couple of things, however, that I don't like about the dash. I've talked about this before, that the way that the dash works, the way it buries things in this menu structure and makes you have to have this workaround to see the trip meter, for example. I don't like that, right? I still think that this is a touring motorcycle. Let me have the trip meter out there on the dash that I can just glance at. I don't have to go into some deep menu structure. Also, let me have my tire pressure monitoring system up on the main dash if I want it. The way that it works now, I have to go through, about 5 or 6 menu clicks in order to find the tire pressure monitoring system. All right, so if I'm up in the morning and I haven't checked my tires, I want to do that while I'm riding. Well, now I've got to, again, flip over, go down, hit. It's ridiculous, right, that you have to do this to get to those things. So I still think that if Triumph wants to improve this, that they need to allow us to put some custom items out there on that dash. Again, for me, it would be the trip meter and the tire pressure monitoring system. Those would go on there. Now, another little quirk I found out about this bike was that there's 2 trip meters on this bike. There's, number 1 and number 2. So typically what I'll do, and I'm sure most of us do this, I use number 1 for my current day's trip or the current gas tank, depending. And then number 2 is cumulative miles for the trip. So, and usually there's not enough space to go over, 10,000 miles, or in this case, 9,999.9 miles, and then it'll flip over. So I was expecting it to do that when I got up to that point. Surprisingly, I found what happened was I got to 6,214 point something miles, and then it just stopped adding miles. Right? It didn't flip over, it just stopped adding the miles. And I was like, well, that's a weird number. Well, that happens to be the equivalent of 9,999.9 kilometers. Right? So it just goes up to that 6,214 100 miles, and then it just stops. So that kind of makes it difficult to keep track of your entire trip. So basically then you have to go into that deep menu structure, find your service menu, and that's where the odometer is. And then of course you can, use your odometer to figure out how many miles you've gone. But it's just a little harder to do. So that's minor stuff, but it's an annoyance to me, right? Because it's just something that can be so easily fixed, right? And if somebody who actually rides motorcycles and travels on motorcycles and designed that, rather than probably people who didn't, right? Then that dash would work better. But again, that's my pet peeve. All right, gang, so I think that's it. As I said, this bike just did so well. It just gave me very little problems. That occasional little hiccup, starting, but other than that, the bike did great. Oh, wait a minute, I just thought of one thing. Doesn't have to do with the motorcycle, but I had one of my accessory lights go out. Not the stock ones, the ones that I added from Colite. Now, why it ended up going out, I'm not sure. I did take the bike to the car wash to get the big hunks of stuff off, before I had it serviced in Spokane, but they were working after that, both of the lights. And I know that they were working after I had it serviced, but sometime after that, the right side light just stopped working. So I'm not sure at this point whether, again, maybe I did get some water in there from going to the car wash, right? Or I don't know, I'll have to check and see if, you know, my wiring job screwed up, but I'm gonna have to take it apart to do that, and I just haven't done it yet. So that's something I'll let you know in the future, but it is one thing that I did have trouble with. All right, that's it. If you have any other questions, anything that I didn't cover, then obviously drop them in the comments and I'll see if I can answer them. But again, the bike worked great. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than it was fantastic, right? So far, this is probably the most reliable and best motorcycle I've owned. I mean, and that includes the Yamaha Super Tenere. It was very reliable as well, but I had a couple of little issues with it. So this one I've had even fewer. So far I really like this bike. Now we'll see what happens in the future. I've now got 30,000 miles on it, and I'm going to keep riding it, you know, these long distances, and again, I'll keep letting you know. But so far, so good. Fantastic motorcycle. As I said earlier, if you want to buy one and you are in the New England area, Mom's is the place to go. Foxborough, Massachusetts. Go in, check them out.